This week in gaming has been a rollercoaster of insanity for Battlefield fans. Overwatch's co-creator revealed the insane details behind his sudden departure from Blizzard 5 years ago. Marathon got some highly requested changes in its first major update, and much more. It's been a wild week of ups and downs for Battlefield fans. Battlefield 6's Steam reviews dropped to a mixed rating as concerns about the game's post-launch content continue to mount. Then it was revealed that Battlefield Studios was hit with layoffs affecting an undetermined but likely substantial number of employees at DICE, Criterion, Ripple Effect, and Motive. With a slightly positive turn, EA announced that Battlefield 6 is getting a free trial from March 17th to 24th. The second half of the game's Season 2 update is also launching on the 17th, adding the Hegental base map, a night mode with NVGs, and more. Now, if you'd like a full breakdown on the Battlefield 6 layoff situation, I did a much deeper video on that, which I'll link at the end of this one. As for content beyond Season 2, Battlefield 6's design director, Justin Weeb, did an interview with IGN this week. When asked if the upcoming Golmud Railway remake would shrink the playable area, he said, "What I would stress right now is that we've heard the community that big maps are important. Right now we have Golmud in Battlefield Labs testing and look forward to more conversations about that in the future. There's naturally some concern about this as the Operation Firestorm remake that Battlefield 6 launched did condense the map slightly and also kind of changed the cover and layout, so it plays substantially different. Fans are trying to figure out just how much Golmud will change or even shrink potentially from the original design." Co-creator of Overwatch, Jeff Kaplan, made some damning statements regarding his departure from Blizzard, which took place over 5 years ago. Kaplan left the company in 2021, and he revealed in an interview with podcaster Lex Friedman that he was essentially threatened with being scapegoated for 1,000 potential layoffs. Kaplan says Blizzard grossly oversold the potential success of their official esports event circuit known as Overwatch League to investors. He alleges that Blizzard claimed Overwatch League would beat the NFL in popularity. When that didn't happen, Blizzard's CFO, Dennis Durkin, then put massive pressure on Kaplan. He says that Durkin told him directly that if the game failed to hit specific revenue targets, he would lay off 1,000 people and directly blame those layoffs on Kaplan. As a result, Kaplan left the company, calling the meeting the biggest FU moment in my career. Specifics about those revenue targets were censored on the podcast due to Kaplan's NDA with Blizzard. Now, in related news, the studio that Kaplan currently works at, Kitsugiyama, just revealed The Legend of California, the game he's directing. It's a multiplayer open-world survival FPS set during the California Gold Rush that critics are comparing favorably to Red Dead Redemption. Hopefully it pans out for Kaplan and his team. Microsoft made some interesting announcements at this year's GDC. They confirmed the next generation console will use a custom AMD chip that'll combine the CPU, GPU, and onboard components into one unit. They claimed it'll deliver an order of magnitude leap in ray tracing performance. They also said it's being built for the next generation of their DirectX API and AMD's FSR upscaling technology. Microsoft and Nvidia are working together on DirectX to address long-standing issues like shader compilation stuttering and lengthy shader pre-caching times. Developer kits will start shipping in 2027, and a full reveal probably isn't in the cards until 2028. For PC gamers, Microsoft also announced that their revamped Xbox mode for Windows 11 is rolling out next month. This is essentially a software layer that gives games much more direct access to your PC's hardware, improving performance and making it less likely that rendering will be interrupted by background processes. Nvidia also revealed some new DLSS-related updates at GDC. The big highlight here is that their frame generation feature is getting a new dynamic mode that basically uses as many resources as it needs to bump up your frame rate to the targeted frame rate it's aiming for, and doesn't waste it shooting beyond that, and basically gives you better performance and latency as a result. They also have a new upscaling model that looks incredible. I was actually there in person and got to check it out, where upscaling from 720p to 4K looked so much better. It was kind of crazy. I'm trying to figure out how they even did it. And there's a bunch of other cool new features that I might talk about in an upcoming video. Bungie just released the first major update for their sci-fi extraction shooter Marathon, and it makes a ton of key adjustments. The highlights include increased starting ammo in the Mida, the Cyber Acme, and the Arachne free sponsored kits. There was also an increase to the range that gunfire and explosions can be heard from. Previously, there was a very dramatic cutoff for distance audio that made even heavy weapon fire virtually inaudible at just 150 meters away. The UESC enemies had their health reduced by 10 to 15%, and the shield HP of boss enemies was reduced by 25%. These changes address some of the bigger issues that players were having with the game. In fact, my top criticism from playing in the server slam was the audio from weapons. I felt it made it really hard to find other players, even if you're looking for PvP, and it's nice to see that Bungie was able to make adjustments to the system so quickly. The developers of extraction shooter Gray Zone Warfare dropped a new devlog this week showing off a big chunk of what's coming in Update 0.4 titled Spearhead. The devs say the update adds more than 25 new locations, several new mini biomes like burned forest, bamboo forest, and swamps, plus reworked existing areas with more environmental storytelling and better sightlines. The studio is also adding 7 distinct enemy factions, each with clearer visual identity and their own bosses, along with visually upgraded PMC head models. On the gear side, the update looks pretty massive. Madfinger says Spearhead will include 8 new weapons, more than 380 new weapon parts, over 150 new gear pieces, manual bolting, revamped weapon stats, improved ballistics and rebalanced helmets, grenades, and durability systems. They're also overhauling the loot experience by doubling the number of distinct loot items, adding over 123 items, 351 intel items, new container types, and more deliberate high and low value loot zones. The broader takeaway is that the next update looks to be less of a routine patch and more of a substantial refresh. According to the devs, it grew in scope so much that they opted to delay their next narrative content update to get 0.4 out. They'll release one more devlog diving deeper into the update's gameplay changes next week. Update 0.4 is launching sometime at the end of the month. Slay the Spire 2 finally plateaued at a staggering 574,000 concurrent players on Steam. This early access deck builder roguelike launched last week and blew way past the game's first concurrent player count of 57,000 players. It also sold nearly 3 million copies since launch, which is nearly double the original's entire early access sales total of roughly 1.5 million. Early previews of the upcoming open world RPG Crimson Desert on consoles seem favorable. According to Digital Foundry, the game seems to target and mostly hit 60 FPS in most situations outside of major boss battles, at least on the PlayStation 5 Pro. It's unclear how well the game will run on the base PlayStation 5 model, but testing is already underway. On PS5 Pro, the game supports 3 graphics modes: a 60 FPS optimal mode, a 40 FPS balance mode, and a 30 FPS quality mode that doesn't sound like it's worth the drop in the frame rate. There are some concerns from gamers that the game's base console version will run poorly. Clearly there's room for improvement, but it seems like the devs are pretty on top of things. Crimson Desert launches on the 19th. Unfortunately, that launch is embroiled in a bit of controversy because the game's Steam page was just updated today to mention that it'll utilize Denuvo's DRM tools. Denuvo is a pretty hot topic since it's been shown to negatively affect performance when improperly implemented, and it can lock players out of their games when Denuvo's online services have outages. Fortnite players are not excited as the game's real-world money currency is getting a price hike on the 19th. Each tier of the V-Bucks will give players fewer V-Bucks for the same amount of money. These changes range from 200 to 2,000 fewer V-Bucks for your money depending on the tier you buy. Across social media, players are frustrated by the price increase since the game reportedly made over $6 billion last year alone. Epic is offering 20% cash back in store credit for people who buy premium currencies through the Epic Games Store as compensation for the increase. Valve is facing a new legal fight in New York over loot boxes. The state attorney general has filed a lawsuit claiming systems used in games like Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and Team Fortress 2 function as illegal gambling because players spend real money for randomized cosmetic items that can sometimes be worth a lot on the Steam marketplace. New York is seeking to shut the system down in the state and potentially recover significant financial penalties. Valve, meanwhile, argues that loot boxes are just optional cosmetic items, more like buying trading cards than gambling. Gamers seem to be pretty excited that Valve is not settling and is instead fighting the case. And it's still early, but if New York wins, it could have a major ripple effect for how monetization works across the entire game industry. Up next, I recommend you check out this video that gives you a deeper dive into the Battlefield 6 layoff situation. There's a lot of layers to it, and I think it's worth diving deeper to actually understand what's going on. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.